By the time a bill is officially drafted and numbered, you're already in the middle of the story. The most successful teams don't wait for the bill, they listen for the conversation that happens before the ink is even dry. Today, we're talking about building an early warning system that looks beyond legislation to the newsletters, social posts, and agency reports that signal exactly what's coming next. In our last episode, we talked about moving at the speed of AI, using tools like Quincy, Quorum's AI assistant, to summarize 800-page bills so you can focus on strategy instead of just reading. But a bill is actually a late-stage signal. Today, we're diving into a different kind of dataset, a collection of government communications and documents that aren't specifically bills or regulations, but are often where that early warning lives. Now, if you aren't a Quorum user, don't worry. The strategy of listening for the preamble is what separates proactive teams from those that are constantly reacting. We're going to look at how items like press releases, social media posts, and executive orders serve as a roadmap. Even if you're doing this manually, you might learn a few new places to look for the signals that others are missing. I often see teams focus 100% of their energy on bill tracking. But if you only track bills, you're missing the why and the when of policy. In Quorum, we track a massive collection of communications, including press releases, newsletters, and social media posts. But you need to broaden your lens on what to monitor. You should be looking at social media posts from legislators. This is where they test narrative and gauge public reaction in real time. Look at what caucuses and committees are saying and not saying. What are the groups within the legislature saying? Caucus statements often signal a coordinated party line before a bill is even introduced. Look at think tanks and peer organizations. Monitor fact sheets and white papers from your peers and advocacy groups. If a coalition suddenly starts emphasizing a specific topic or avoiding one, that's a strategic signal you can't afford to miss. For listeners who aren't on Quorum yet, the strategy here is to move your monitoring upstream. You should be following committee accounts, caucus leaders, and peer organizations on social media. If you only wait for the formal bill to drop, you've already lost that window of time where you can influence how the issue is being framed. One of the most valuable ways to use this pre-bill data is to create a comprehensive map of your key players. First, let's look at the veterans, the key players you already know. We talked in episode 1 about the importance of listening for silence, and these non-legislative communications are how you actually prove it. By setting up alerts for what veteran committee members are, and just as importantly, what they aren't, referencing in their public statements, you can identify who is still undecided or who is intentionally avoiding a topic. In Quorum, we can actually filter these communications by what they are referencing. For instance, you can see if a social post mentions a specific bill or if an agency report references a specific committee. This gives you a clear map of the conversation before a single vote is cast. Then you have to account for the new faces entering the mix. The real pro move is acting early the moment committee assignments are announced for a new session. If a freshman legislator gets assigned to one of your key committees, your very first move should be a digital audit of their history. Look at their past social media, their old press releases, and their newsletters. If those new faces haven't said anything about your topic yet, you've found a massive opportunity. A lack of a paper trail usually means they are undecided or haven't formulated a hard stance yet. This is exactly where your expertise can change the trajectory of an issue. By reaching out early with a briefing or a fact sheet, you aren't just reacting to their position, you're helping them build it. For those of you without a central tool, this means you need to be tracking mentions alongside actions. Seeing who is talking about your issue outside of formal votes and who is staying quiet tells you where the heat is and where you still have room to influence the final outcome. Another area that is too often overlooked is the executive branch. Executive orders and agency reports are definitely something you'll want to keep an eye on. Documents like GAO reports, CBO reports often lay the investigative groundwork for future budget shifts. At the local and state level, you'll want to keep an eye on county, city, and state regulatory board documents. We often see huge signals in these decisions coming from their meeting minutes and agendas. So keeping an eye on what they're discussing or not discussing is a critical move. In my onboarding sessions, I always recommend turning on alerts for these specific pre-bill sources. If you're in a highly regulated industry, you need to know when a board even mentions your keyword in their meeting minutes. For those without a central tool, this means regularly checking the meeting archives of the boards that oversee your industry. Long before that becomes a formal regulation, those minutes are telling you exactly which way the wind is blowing. Here's your key takeaway for today. A bill is a result, not a starting point. This week, audit your monitoring sources. Look at the caucuses, the think tanks, and especially the new faces on your committees. If you find a legislator who hasn't spoken on your issue yet, treat it as an invitation to share your expertise. Build an early warning system that lets you act while the narrative is still being written. If you want to see how Quorum pulls all these caucus statements and social posts into one feed, check out the Documents tab in your account. In our final episode of this 6-part series, we're going to talk about the so what? How to turn all this data into executive-ready reports and briefs that actually prove your team's value. Thanks for listening to Policy Wins.